Alright, so today we're going to make a how-to video on using Rainbird Sirius software. Um, so essentially here we've just built a spreadsheet that's got all the information for our course. So we just put in the whole green zone, we just gave it a code, G1, gallons per minute, the type of rotor, we're working with Rainbird 700 and 900 series here, what type of decoder, and the address. So I'm going to jump into the software here. So we get to the home page here, we're just going to go up to this top icon here, Station Detail. Then we're going to jump into here, and then first off we're going to assign area handles. So we're going to jump in here. So essentially just pick a code, there's letters, the whole alphabet's in here. For example here we've got G for greens, F for fairways. You just type it in and hit enter. Essentially it'll use that. So then you close the top here, you've got greens and fairways. Obviously you can do this for all your different complexes. Next thing we're going to work into is the default data settings. So there's some stuff you're going to have to enter in here. So here we've got the default runtime top here. So we're just going to use 10 minutes as an example here. You get your cycle and soak times here. And then there's some ET stuff in the end. We're not going to talk about that in this video. We're going to jump over here into the default rotor data. So here you can enter in what type of rotor you have. We're just going to use a 700 for example. Orange nozzle, 80 psi along the top here. Nozzles here. We're going to hit OK. Get your gallons per minute. This is your number of heads per station. So we're working with 2 heads per station. And here, this is your precipitation rate. I'll show you guys how to make that auto-populate. So you're going to jump into this little chart with the blue icon here. Switch this to precip data table. You're going to go into here. It's going to give you the option for some different spacing. Square spacing, triangle, so on and so forth. We're going to use the triangle for this example. So it's going to ask you for head spacing and row spacing. So I'm just going to jump into a diagram here to kind of explain that a little bit. So with your square spacing, the head spacing, the row spacing are the same. So you might have like a 70-foot head-to-head coverage. The row spacing is going to be 70. With the triangle spacing, however, so here if you have a 70-foot head-to-head coverage, rather, you're going to have to multiply that number by 0.866, which is a constant. And it's going to give you around 60, and that'll actually be your row spacing. So just keep that in mind when you're entering this data in. Essentially your gallons per minute, your arc, just gives you some options here, and then it'll auto-populate your precip. And when you jump back into this table rather, and jump into here, you can select your number here, and it'll auto-populate that for you. Okay, and then I'm going to show you guys how to import the data. So when you're here, once you've gone through and filled out the stuff we've talked about, click on this little black arrow here, import data. You just select all greens, or all areas, all sub-areas, all data, hit OK, and it'll kind of use that as a default. Okay, and now I'm going to show you guys how to make a station. So essentially just click on one of your complexes here, say greens for example, you hit plus, it'll auto-populate the stations. So you can add some stations, and there's a few things you're going to have to add in here. So you're going to have to give it a decoder number here essentially. We're just going to, for example, we're going to number them 1, 2, so on and so forth, 3 here. You're going to have to number them. You're going to have to switch your decoders here. So if you have more than one head, you're going to have to use, so for instance, the 202s are for stations with 2 heads. Our greens here are actually 601s. So you're going to have to pick the right decoder for that station. You have to go through and manually do that. It's kind of tedious. Some other things you're going to have to watch for here is this is your number of solenoids. So if you have more than one solenoid, like depending on how many heads you have, you can see over here we've got 2 heads per station. So you're going to have to manually change this to 2 so that it matches. So the computer kind of knows how much electrical current you're going to need. So essentially that's how you make a station, and that's pretty much it.